The place of aim. We've examined previously the necessity of aim, so we'll speak now to the place where aim comes from. It was said that to find any real aim in the work sense, it is necessary to think of oneself in the light of the knowledge taught by the work. This can only begin after a long period of self-observation, so that one can actually see what we are like in view of the work. It was also noted that a person may be all right in life but all wrong in the work. For example, one could enjoy being negative in life if they want to, but not in the work. The work changes our view of ourselves and makes us think in a new way about what is referred to as the self. We can now speak of aim with regard to where it comes from in us. Aim can come from right or wrong places. Aim may be right and come from a wrong place, and aim may be wrong and yet come from the right place. In order to understand what this means, we have to turn back to centers and parts of centers, then speak a little about attention once more. Aim comes from a wrong place when it comes from small mechanical divisions of centers, where attention is at a minimum or passes from one trifle to another. Where in fact there is zero focus, or only a number of separate small attentions and no comprehensive attention. Aim cannot come from small scattered focus which belong to the mechanical divisions of centers. It must be formed and must come from higher divisions, where the quality of attention is different. Ordinary focus is not sufficient. P.D. Ouspensky in speaking about this said that ordinary attention which goes here and there all the time, is not really attention. He said that only concentration that maintains its direction for some time could be called attention. He pointed out how people give so much of their time to small things and are constantly distracted by them. So if we waste all the force of our intellect on trivial things we have no attention for bigger things. In that case, it will be a long time before we can increase our degree of focus. He said it was therefore necessary to struggle against giving too much attention to small things, as these small things do not need much of our effort. The moving parts of centers can perform their small daily tasks with little attention. So unless we have some power of free attention we cannot expect to keep aim or indeed learn what the work is about, because we will be preoccupied with small things and the work can never be understood if it is taken either as a small thing or on the level of trivia. The reason is that the mind is not one and the same, but has smaller and bigger parts, and the work belongs to its bigger part and cannot fit into, or be grasped by its smaller parts. Each center has first of all three divisions corresponding to the three centers themselves. Intellectual, emotional and instinct moving center. It is in the moving parts of centers where small things lie, and here note in these parts that nothing belongs to us, therefore we cannot formulate aim from these areas. This is interesting to reflect upon. What lies in the mechanical or moving parts of your intellectual center, for example, does not belong to you. These small mechanical parts are filled with conversations you have heard, newspapers you have read, movies you have watched, songs you have listened to, all sorts of tittle-tattle, phrases, pictures, jargon, slogans, and words. So these things do not belong to you at all, they simply come and go through time, driven by social trends and whims or fancy. Aim, however, must not come and go. It must belong to you. So when we take anything into emotional or intellectual parts of centers, then it begins to belong to us and can even create something. So it is here that the ideas of the work and all similar ideas such as those found in the Gospels must fall, for here they can breathe and live, becoming one's own. People in whom only the moving parts of centers are working, find it impossible to make aim in the right place within themselves. We have parts of centers for life and parts of centers for other things. The same thing, passed through different parts of centers, will look quite different. The same idea or the same phrase received in moving, in emotional and in intellectual parts of centers becomes quite different. The ideas of the work are too big for small parts of centers to absorb. They will only see a small bit and therefore not understand what it means, as a result it becomes distorted. Only bigger divisions of centers can catch sight of the whole concept of the teaching of this work. Moving parts of centers which are turned towards external life, towards the senses, cannot grasp it because it is not their function to do so. Not only is each distinct center in us for a distinct purpose, but every part and subdivision too. We have not one mind, but three, and in each are many smaller minds. If we could use the particular right mind for a particular thing, that is the right center or part of it, then we would be balanced in our centers. However, we are nearly always out of our right mind, and use the wrong center or part. So to take this work with mechanical parts of centers and to let it fall there, is exactly an example of being out of one's right mind. To chit-chat about the work and then about the latest rumor, scandal or gossip about the office is to let the work fall on and so get mixed up with small mechanical parts of centers, and with the small eyes dwelling in these little uninteresting villas. To listen to the work without valuation or attention is to take it with these little mechanical life eyes. That is why the work says that everything begins with evaluation. Certainly at first we listen to the work as best we can. However, if we have magnetic center, if we have ears to hear, then it begins to fall upon emotional parts of centers and their gain value. Once we understand that mind in this teaching is regarded as being on different levels, just as is the universe, through the ray of creation. That the lowest level of mind is called the moving or mechanical part of a center, then we can understand the psychological reason for many things. Understand, for example, why we must not talk too much of this work, because it tends to place it into moving parts of centers. It is better for people in the work to talk of other things, rather than do this, or if they have spoken seriously of the work, to change to some other kind of talk as soon as possible, then notice the difference. We can also understand in quite a practical way why it is said that one must not take the name of the Lord God in vain. Things belonging to higher and so more conscious parts of centers must not be allowed to mix themselves up with what belongs to lower mechanical parts. This is the real meaning of profanity. Profanity is mixing higher and lower things, and this destroys the proper order of parts of centers. It messes up and destroys the very complex and delicate mechanisms in us, each of whose parts has a definite and distinct function. We can further understand why so much importance is attached to the possession of magnetic center. In life there are two kinds of influences, called A and B. In this system, A influences belong to life and are created by life, by politics, by war, sport, money, influences, and so on. B influences are of quite a different order, and come from outside of everyday life. The Gospels are an example as they come from conscious mankind, not mechanical humanity. Notice that moving parts of centers can only take in A influences, and are only ever meant to do so. B influences fall on emotional parts of centers, and C influences, if one happens to meet with them, come directly from conscious man, falling on intellectual parts. By treating the matter in this way we can see how things can all fall into their rightful places. To get into higher, that is more conscious parts of centers, the act of attention is necessary. It is easier to remain in moving or mechanical parts, and it is interesting to notice how we avoid the effort. To become more conscious of our lives and of what we are like, it is necessary to be in more conscious parts of centers. In those parts that can see several things together and not only one at a time. Self-observation leads to an increase of the consciousness of oneself, of one's life, and from this aim becomes clearer. We begin to see what is wrong, not just at the moment, but what runs throughout our lives. This is not possible to see from moving parts of centers, as here life cannot be seen but only the moment. So to make aim from mechanical eyes in moving parts of centers is quite wrong. They only see through narrow slits. So it becomes important to think of where we make aim from, as well as what our aim is. We cannot of course make a permanent aim on a whim, out of the blue, so to speak. We cannot exclaim suddenly, I swear I will never identify again, or never be negative, and so on. Larger and more permanent aim in the work must be based on self-knowledge gained through practical self-observation. Take negative emotions for example. They are a big question, so one cannot suddenly make an aim about them. We can, and should instead begin by making the temporary aim of not expressing them as the work suggests. This helps to observe them better. Then we can see gradually that if we waste a great deal of force on being negative, we have no energy for anything else, such as happiness for example. Then we may notice that we cannot get into attention, and so cannot get into the better parts of centers if all of our focus is drawn into this useless direction. After we have seen all this for ourselves and many other things, then we can begin to make a more permanent and real aim about some of our negative states. For something that comes from the right place in us. For we will understand better what we are doing and so will be doing it more from ourselves and what belongs to us. But if hearing that one must struggle against negative states, we make an aim from some little imitative I in the moving part of a center, just because we heard it was the thing to do, and jotted it down in our notebook like a good scholar, we will not understand anything about our aim. It will not belong to us. Aim will be perhaps right, but will come from an utterly wrong place. So it is important to think of where aim comes from and not only what our aim is. Take another example, suppose we aim at getting over our unwanted associations about people. If we do this simply from moving parts of centers, from small mechanical eyes, these eyes will see no reason why we should, because these unwanted mechanical associations are their special work. We are telling a factory not to do its special job. The unwanted associations lie in mechanical parts, in mechanical eyes. But if in this case we think about the person in connection with the work, we will be lifted out of mechanical parts of centers and mechanical associations, and so take them on another level. All the chances we have depend upon the existence of another level. Our aim will then come from the right place and may yield results. We might be able to get quite a new way of taking people whom mechanically we dislike, and may see their mechanicalness in terms of what we see of our own mechanicalness. So we again see that aim may be right, but where it comes from is what is important. We can do many things quite easily or more easily from the level of the work, which are impossible if we try to do them from the level of life. The explanation lies in these different parts of centers, and from what part our aim comes. For this reason it is necessary to know through observation where we are in ourselves, in what part of the large psychological house we are, and not to try to do things when we are in the basement that belongs to another level. It is a practical question to ask oneself, where am I? We may be close to a very bad, narrow-minded and evil I, or in very small parts of centers, where our powers of attention are zero. Then we cannot expect to make important decisions successfully, or if we are looking forward to something, expect it to go very well. We will spoil it without doubt. The mere act of attention due to self-observation may change our position and get us into a better place. We know that we can be in a place in outer space, and not be in the right place in inner space. We know a lot about being in the wrong or right place externally, in space, but very little about being in the wrong or right place internally, within ourselves. The latter is far more important. Of course, as long as we take ourselves as one, we cannot understand what this means. But once through observation we see that we are legion, and that we have many places in us, it becomes easier. Lastly, the work teaches that by means of directed attention we can change our inner position.